Thanks, Ange. Well, Luxology and the Foundry have merged, and we've come here to California, in particular to San Francisco, to speak to the guy who actually first suggested the idea, John Knoll, ILM's VFX supervisor of such great films as the upcoming Pacific Rim and, of course, the Star Wars films and the Pirates films. But before I speak to John Knoll, let's talk to Bill Collis and sort of work out the parameters of this new merger, as Bill is the CEO of the combined entity. So, Bill, if we look at the press releases and the sort of comments being put out by the Foundry and Luxology, nothing changes. So in the short term, people have basically stability in terms of price, who they've been dealing with and how the companies are set up.
That's exactly the plan. So for most of our customers, it should be, or all our customers, it should be business as usual.
So if that's the case and you're not reducing any staff, in fact, you're hiring, is that correct?
Absolutely. We're looking to hire engineers, more marketing people, more sales people. The plan is to actually grow both organisations, well, the one organisation now.
Okay, so if you're not changing anything in terms of price and not changing in terms of reducing costs, why do it?
We think there's some really, really exciting work to be done from taking Luxology technology and Foundry technology and combining the two. And this isn't something that we're sort of elaborating on today, because it's really stuff we want to work with by talking to our customers over the coming months. I think we both need to move in slightly different directions as time goes on, but there's lots of intriguing things. So our customer sets are actually remarkably different. So only about 10% of Luxology's customers in the VFX space. They have large numbers of customers in the design space, industrial design and gaming space that we don't.
Do you want to get into design and gaming?
Yeah, we're fascinated by those areas. We think some bits of our technology are applicable. We've seen Mari used very recently in 1313 in the games by LucasArts.
So there are different targets there. I mean, quite different targets. I mean, you're not after ultra-realism at the cost of interactivity in games.
No, I agree. They're different, but there's lots of underlying technology that's the same. And the Luxology guys have better understanding of that than we do. So hopefully as one organisation, we can leverage their technology and their knowledge in that area, and we can help them in the VFX space.
So now, in the new structure, you're CEO of the new entity, and explain your role and Brad's, because Brad's now got an expanded role as well.
Yeah, so I'm still CEO of the Foundry. Brad is going to become president of the Americas for the Foundry. In the short term, though, he's very, very much focused on the Luxology business and continuing to run that in the brilliant way he's done it for the last 8-10 years. But he's also going to be looking after our customers in America across both companies. He's still going to be based out of the Mountain View office. We're still going to keep our Venice Beach office as well, but hopefully Brad will become a regular visitor down there. I've been really, really impressed by the community Brad's built, particularly the online community. With the Foundry, we have a great, loyal customer base that we work really closely with, but Brad's definitely built a very special community. And if we can try and mimic that and extend that to include some Foundry customers, that's going to be really beneficial.
Let me talk about the Nexus technology, because they have a licensing approach that allows that technology to move into other areas, and Photo 360 is an example of that. Is that model of licensing technology into non-VFX space something that the Foundry, A, will continue with Luxology, and B, might consider doing with its own technology?
Absolutely. So it's a really important part of the Luxology business. It's got their name out there to thousands of customers via the SolidWorks deals and the Bentley deals. And the Foundry isn't a stranger to licensing technology, though. So in the past, we've licensed our retiming technology to Adobe, for example, and other cases, Keylight as well. So it's something we'd very much like to continue and grow.
So we were talking to some of your customers, and they came up with an interesting point, which is that while Katana in particular is render agnostic, they think you should get off the fence and commit to shipping with a renderer, albeit a renderer that still gives you the option to use a different renderer if you want. What's your view moving forward on rendering? Because now you have 3D so much as part of the company. I mean, do you see replacing the scanline renderer in Nuke, for example? Do you see maybe further acquisitions? Where are you on rendering?
It's a very complex subject. I think we agree that we need to have, well, with Luxology technology, we now have a renderer. And over the coming months, we've got to work out if that is the right renderer to be built into Nuke, the right renderer to be built into Katana, or whether we can develop it further, if it needs to be developed further, to be a renderer that could possibly ship with Nuke and Katana.
I'm a big Modo fan, and I have used it on a number of productions here. But it's got some weaknesses, in particular with extremely dense scenes, and with its ability to manage collaborative workflow. So if you want to have a large sequence with many artists active in that sequence, it doesn't, like, the referencing system definitely needs work. And there are a couple other aspects like that to the scene authoring tool that make it better for one-off kind of work. So I've used it primarily on things that are one-offs, things that are going to appear in 3 or 4 shots, where you can really get the maximum benefit of the integrated authoring system. So you can do very quick look dev. You can fix things directly in a shot. The interactive previewer is fantastic. You can really see what you're going to get. You're evaluating the final shading model in an interactive window, so you can be making little material and lighting tweaks, really see what you're getting.
But it doesn't have a lot of strength traditionally in the animation, character animation zone.
The character animation tools are relatively new, and I don't know how mature they really are compared to competing products. They now, with the support for Alembic caches and previously with MDD deformers, you could bring in animation from other packages. So I did some work on Confessions of a Shopaholic. All the renders were done in Modo there, and we did these mannequins that come to life and talk to our lead character, and all that animation was done in Maya, and then the animation was exported as MDD files and applied as deformers on the mannequin models in Modo, and so we rendered them that way.
Okay, so if that's defined the parameters of where Modo kind of is this union with the Foundry going to get you something new, do you hope?
Yes, I hope that it broadens the scope of projects that we can use Modo on, because the Foundry products, in particular Katana, now a really good platform for collaborative workflow, for management of large scenes. The hope is that we can use the strength of that along with the convenience and the rapid development of assets that I get out of the Modo scene authoring environment.
So how does this work with renderers? Because traditionally ILM is a RenderMan house, but you've also used Arnold. I mean, how do you see the rendering side of things? Or is Modo only going to be used upstream in kind of a modeling and feed into a bigger pipe?
No, I like the Modo renderer. It's I've used it on a number of shows.
Oh, really? So you'd like to therefore see Katana supporting Modo, presumably in Modo's pipeline?
Yeah, I mean, Katana by design is renderer agnostic, and so in principle it can talk to any number of renderers. So the idea is that I'd like to be able to use Katana's scene management tools, but be able to do look dev, modeling, and in Modo, and be able to leverage that for larger scenes in Katana.
So you obviously don't speak for the companies, but when I was talking to some of your colleagues, they were saying that they thought the Foundry ought to get off the fence and commit to a renderer. And they didn't say that exclusively, because they obviously appreciate that it needs to be agnostic at a certain point, but that maybe the Foundry should commit to at least providing a renderer, a solution. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that there are big advantages to this acquisition, that now with this very intimate partnership, that it means that there can be very deep, high-level integration. So if you look at how renderers like Arnold and RenderMan are supported in Katana, it's not the same level that you could get if they owned the product. And
are you in support of, for example, the OSL initiative? I mean, it hasn't had as much traction as as Alembic has, though it's just starting to pick up. V-Race announced that they were going to support it.
Yeah, I think that anytime there is a standard like that that's put forward that encompasses enough functionality, it's great for everybody, because it prevents all these, the lack of interoperability and so many people duplicating effort.
And what about from the Foundry's point of view? Do they need to move closer towards where the Luxology guys are?
Well, one of the things I love about Modo and the whole attitude amongst the Luxology folks is their commitment to really good workflow and user interface design. And that's what really attracted me to Modo in the first place, was somebody was really thinking about how to make the workflow as smooth, have as few wasted steps, so that there's less technology between the artist and the art. And with all the budgetary pressures that everybody's under, really you want artists to spend most of their time doing art and less kind of fighting a technology layer that's between them and the art.
And yet, if you want to have a large pool of freelancers that are Modo literate, you sort of want there to be sort of it spread out. And if you want that to also encompass sort of connecting through Katana, and do we need to see because the Foundry is, for some Modo users, out of their price range. I mean, do they both need to come together to form that bridge, or is there more movement from one side or the other?
Well, not entirely. I'll say that if you want to have a full production pipeline all kind of built from Foundry tools, that's a big investment. It doesn't prevent you from using tools like Modo. I think that I've seen very high-quality work done just with Modo and After Effects.
Right. So, in other words, it's completely valid.
It does not cut out the low end.
Right. And in terms of the tools that Modo has, it's, I guess, only recently it had the particles kind of stuff added, and even then it's kind of fairly low level. Is there any need for them to go further into effects and effects animation, or is that something that's kind of well owned by other people?
Well, one thing I do like is that Modo does play well with pipelines, so that I've done projects where I did some rendering of parts of a scene in Modo and then did hair in RenderMan. I have rendered projects that were sort of freely intermixed with renders from other renders, from V-Ray and RenderMan. So because it's fairly straightforward to get cameras in and geometry in, and now with the support for Alembic caching, you can get much more complex animation in without a big headache, that it's really very easy to mix those things together.
And ILM's in a position that it can obviously write a lot of Python scripts and custom code and stuff to build out. How do you see it being able to be sort of put into that environment where clearly you may want to extend certain aspects?
Well, I don't see any reason why we can't do the same things in Modo. It's got Python and Perl interpreters that can access quite a lot of the functionality of the program, and there's a developer's kit if you need to do something more involved in that.
And is there anything that you're looking to the Foundry to learn from? I mean, you mentioned already sort of the customer thing, that obviously got a lot of new customers pretty happy with the Foundry, but is there anything else that you can see that you'd like to see moved over towards the Foundry? I
think that the cultures are compatible. One thing I like about the tools I've seen from the Foundry is a real focus on interface. I think that could go further, and I think, especially if you look at what Luxology has achieved with some really complex topics very well presented. The UI and workflow is really one of the better 3D packages out there for that. I'd like to see that maybe find its way into some of the other Foundry products.
Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to quote you to you. You said that you are fiercely independent in terms of personality as a company, and you thought selling the company, you'd be letting go of control unless you could find, and I'm quoting, a magical partnership. So, is the Foundry magical?
It's been magical thus far. I'm extremely happy with the relationship as it's been, and I think as a married person, I understand the importance of weathering tough times together to really find out what your relationship really is. And I've been describing the merger process as a really big wedding. Imagine you're throwing the largest wedding you could possibly, and you're not having to coordinate it with your mother-in-law, but a team of lawyers.
So I'm a guy and I'm a Moto user, and you've got someone like John Knoll and you've got the Foundry, they've got great customers, but they're like Oscars and bright, shiny things over here. Convince me that you're not going to be interested to service just them and then leave me behind, because I was the guy that was with you, from the outset.
Absolutely. I mean, we are so... It's interesting, the Foundry, as I keep hammering on, they have that focus on VFX, and that's actually going to not skew us towards VFX. It's actually going to liberate us. And the exciting thing is that, we've got the Foundry and Luxology together, which means we're simply going to be doing more. We're going to be developing more, and we're going to be developing tools that may be at the request of the John Knowles, but that technology that's driven by the highest end and the most rigorous sort of production constraints, that's going to impact in a positive way the tool set that everybody uses.
So you must be really having an eye on putting your renderer with Katana, because that would be a really nice fit, wouldn't it?
It would be a nice fit. That seems like a logical thing to do. I would love to see the Moto renderer in Katana, in Mari, in Nuke, in Maya, in Softimage, in Word. And the SubD implementation, we obviously have our own SubD engine that's very compact in terms of memory and very fast. It doesn't handle the high valence vertices as well, and the more challenging topology that the Pixar SubD does. And the Pixar SubD also gives us multi-resolution for sculpting. And we can do variable edge creasing. You can use our fall-off tools to change or feather a blend from completely smooth to completely tight.
And product designers must love it.
They love that. They love being able to go in there and crease an edge without having to add bevels, for instance.
Because you already are very good at outputting lots of different passes and stuff.
Absolutely.
For later compositing. One of the passes that's pretty hot at the moment, that certainly the Foundry jumped on fairly early, is deep compositing. Is that of interest to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another one where I think, and we have a lot of requests that have come in for that over the past, and I think it's really just a matter of educating our staff on how best to do it. And
OpenEXR 2.0 will help, right?
Yeah.
Because it gives you a better target to shoot at.
Yeah, I think the other thing is just knowing or being directly coupled with the team who knows what to do with that data can guide our hand to make sure we get them that data in exactly the way that they need it.
So Simon, I'm curious whether the GPU technology that has been so interestingly developed by the Foundry the last couple of years, in particular we've seen that filter into a number of products, is that compatible with the kind of stuff that the guys at Luxology have been looking at in terms of GPUs and stuff?
Well, there's probably no clash, but there's probably a lot of opportunity to make something out of what both sides have done. So clearly we've kind of approached a similar compute resource problem, but in reasonably different ways. So it's probably one of many, many things which we can actually benefit from on both sides here. So they know stuff that we haven't done, and we know stuff they haven't done. And I think that's kind of a neat part of this partnership.
Certainly one of the things you've been very successful at doing as a company is handling very large data sets and large amounts of stuff. And that hasn't been traditionally an area that Luxology has been known for. Is that relevant, or is it a different problem in terms of the computational way that you're approaching those large data sets in 3D?
Well, I think there's a lot that we know from the work we do and the work that our customers in our own particular market do that we can bring to bear upon on the way Luxology work, and particularly the way Modo works. So I think there's, again, a lot of crossover there in terms of what we can offer that these guys can take advantage of. And similar kind of thing happens probably on the GPU compute side, where, again, we're approaching an interesting compute problem, knowing that we have very massive data sets to process and having to get them efficiently through a GPU architecture. And again, their approach to the same problem has been different and very aligned to making sure Modo is a very artist-friendly, very interactive, high-speed application.
Because they're good at doing powerful tools that don't sort of clutter the UI, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and I think they've kind of been praised for that kind of work ever since they created Modo. So all the generations of Modo up to this one, and hopefully carrying on, have all kind of benefited from that very, very clean, it's not a difficult product to pick up from scratch. And I think there's a lot of ideas they've put into interface design and the swiftness with which you can very quickly prototype something, which we can all learn from.
I imagine also things like Color I/O. I mean, you guys adopted that throughout the product line to give you good color management. And I imagine you'd want to extend that to the Moto products for the same reason.
Yeah, that's one of the kind of like things we've been talking about today even. So really, today is the first time we've actually had the fun time of spending a huge amount of time together. And there's just a bunch of stuff like that which we've been discussing already. And I think the list of things that we need to do and want to do fairly early on is really huge, and that's a good one of them.